The typical teamwork here from the BMW Motorrad squad, with Toprak Razgatlioglu going out together with Michael van der Mark.
Yeah, van der Mark led Razgatlioglu on the first stint, and now it's Toprak's turn to return the favour. Van der Mark down there in the 4th row of the grid in 12th position. Superpole's never been Mikey's big strength. He needs to give himself a chance now in the second run to be able to move yourself further up the field. The good news for him is he's obviously had some crashes in Superpoles already this season. He's now got a banker lap time in, only 0.8 of a second slower than his teammate. He needs to find something to move himself up the order. The good news for him is, though, if he finds a 1/4 of a second behind Toprak, he moves up to the front of the second row of the grid.
Yeah, Michael van der Mark certainly put together a great lap in Barcelona and at Donington Park as well to get onto the second row of the grid at those rounds, but also had a 13th and 3/16th place results in Superpole, as you say. Crash in Most last time out restricted him to the 6th row of the grid there. This then is Álvaro Bautista, who qualified 7th at the Czech round. Of course, had a penalty that relegated him to 10th for race 1, and that stopped him making the podium in that one. Then a crash in the Superpole race that saw him victim of a mid-pack scrum. Qualifying further down the order left him in the battle in race 2. So really important that he gets a strong Superpole result here to avoid, frankly, having so many risks and needing to make so many passes.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key thing. And the riders at the start of the lap now on their first flying laps, Alex Lowe's and Scott Redding, just about to come through turn 1 now at this stage. So we'll see what they're able to do compared to what they did on their first stint.
Jonathan Rea, pole sitter in wet conditions in Assen, but despite that result, he's averaged just P11 so far this season, P15 after a crash last time out at the Czech round. As we pick up Toprak Razgatlioglu, 5 consecutive front row starts for the first time for a BMW rider, and we ride on board with him over the iconic drop in towards turn 1.
Drops into turn 1. You can see there the sideways style for Razgatlioglu. He was able to hit his line through turn 1. You're leaned over all the way through here, down in towards turn 3. Really slow corner into here, one of the slowest of the year, and then you rise up the hill towards turn 4, and then it's in towards turn 5, one of the key corners around this place. So easy to run in a little bit too hot, make a big mistake, cost yourself a lot of lap time, and your Superpole session can be done before it's even started.
Key area of the circuit as we ride on board with Toprak Razgatlioglu, 1.5 of a second up after the opening sector. Watch out for Alex Lowe's as well as Andrea Iannone elsewhere on the circuit. Lowe's making his way through the 3rd sector, is actually 1/10 of a second up on Toprak at the halfway mark.
For Lowe's, he's got Bautista in front of him as well, and Tito Rabat and a few other riders, so we'll see if he gets a bit of traffic. He's up by 1/10 of a second though through that 3rd sector down in towards turn 15.
Alex Lowe's an average 5th on the grid this season so far compared to 7th last year, and another step forward for a rider who has always been a strong qualifier. 3rd on the grid last time out in Most, his 2nd front row start of the season and his 1st since Phillip Island. He's on for another here, a 1:39.887, only 17 thousandths of a second slower than Toprak Razgatlioglu. That might well be good enough for a front row grid slot. Riders behind him still hoping to improve, of course. Toprak Razgatlioglu, though, looking good for pole position here. 1/4 of a second up on Lowe's, making his way now through the final sector. Already 4 pole positions to his name and 3 in a row in this 2024 campaign. Razgatlioglu, pole sitter here in Portimao in 2021, provisional pole sitter in Portimao in 2024 as well. Only 1/10 of a second, though, faster than Alex Lowe's. Great effort that from the number 22 Kawasaki.
Yeah, we know how good Lowe's is over a single lap. Whenever he's partnered up with Jonathan Rea, we could see that that was one of his strengths. Superpole has tended to be that area where he's been able to get the most out of that Kawasaki. Front row now, 1/10 of a second off. We'll see if anyone's able to get themselves close to those times.
And van der Mark up to P5, and that's really important for him. Portimao has been one of his better venues, 7th on the grid here last year, his best of 2023, best this season so far, 4th place at the Catalunya round.
Big snap there for Álvaro Bautista as he gets off the gas, gets on the brakes up the hill in towards turn 13. He's pushing as hard as he can. He's down by 1/2 a second through that 2nd sector. We'll see if he lost time with that moment on the entry.
What a difference a year makes for Álvaro Bautista.
Oh, it's Iker again.
And after a spill earlier on in the session, this is going to be even worse news because he's already routed down in P22 and he is not going to improve with 1 minute remaining on the clock. 2 opportunities here for Álvaro Bautista to get up onto the front row of the grid. Currently in P6, the time's gone away from him in the second half of the lap.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Iker was behind them on track, so yellow flags wouldn't have been a factor. Tito Rabat's just put himself up into the top 10 as well in the 53.
Dominic Egerter, meanwhile, making his way through the final turns now, currently in 9th position in the standings. An opportunity for him to improve, but of course he's lost ground there through that final sector. So you might imagine that there might be yellow flags there, and the rider's just slowing down for that.
Yeah, and the yellows look like they've just been taken in now. Iker walking away there with the marshals and the medics as well, just to make sure that he's okay. Turn 14, not as fast as at the next corner, and this is probably going to be similar to what we saw for Van der Mark in yesterday's session. Just the front goes away from him, and Iker, you're trying to push on to get your lap time. He's obviously under pressure after that mistake on his opening stint, but he ends up 22nd on the grid now, so it's going to be a long weekend, and it has promised a lot for him up to this point.
Remy Gardner, 9th on the grid here in Portimao last season, exiting the final turn, currently down in P13, only moves up into 12th. He's got one more lap. Otherwise, his run of consecutive top 10 qualifying results is going to be ended at this Portuguese round.
The rider to keep an eye on, Alvaro Bautista. We catch up with him now. Much smoother on that transition down in towards turn 13 this time around. We'll see if he's able to move up the order. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to find a massive amount of time, but he only needs to find a couple of tenths of a second to move up to the front of the second row. As it is, 6th position isn't bad for Alvaro, because we know he's going to put himself into position to get a good start and potentially be right at the front from the opening laps of the race this afternoon.
Alvaro Bautista has never qualified on the front row of the grid in 5 appearances at the Portuguese round, yet to record a front row start in 2024, and he's not going to get one here. It is best part of 0.6 of a second down on Toprak. He remains in P6, albeit with a new personal best. Watch out elsewhere. Xavi Vierges just crossed the line to go P12, relegating Remy Gardner backwards. Andrea Locatelli at the moment down in 14th position. He's got a lot of work to do now on his checkered flag lap. Andrea Iannone halfway through the lap, but already 0.8 of a second down. Jonathan Ray and Danilo Petrucci, the other men to watch in the closing stages.
Yeah, Ray with 2 personal bests through the first 2 sectors, but he's given up so much time in sector 1. The run from across the line to the entry for turn 5, he's 0.4 of a second down, even though that's a personal best sector. So for Jonathan, he can have a good run through to the line. He might be able to move himself up onto that second row. He needs to find a 1/10 of a second to move ahead of Alvaro Bautista.
Danilo Petrucci relegated to the 4th position now, with Nicolo Bulliger going up into P3, a 1 minute 40.127. But Petrucci with an opportunity here to recover. The Czech round 3 weeks ago, the first time he's made it onto the front 3 rows of the grid this season. Another round here without the Q tyre, hoping that works in his favour. It is P3 for Petrucci, 0.2 of a second down on Toprak, but enough to displace Nicolo Bulliger. Meanwhile, the Patti Yamahas directly in front of him on track. Andrea Locatelli and Jonathan Ray cross the line to move into 7th and 8th positions. So really important last moment effort there from Andrea Locatelli to make a big climb from the 5th row of the grid and up onto the 3rd row alongside his teammate. Is Razgatlioglu, and that's number 17, as well as a career front row start number 37. Toprak, superb front row qualifying results stretching back to the Catalunya round, only the Australian round. That, frankly, is the only place where he's looked a little bit shakier his first weekend with BMW, but everywhere since he's been very impressive.
Yeah, well, if you look at those front row starts from round 2 onwards and all the pole positions, even in Australia, it was the middle of the second row and he was able to fight at the front in the races, but the engine issue was obviously the big talking point after that opening round of the year. But from that point onwards, Toprak has been faultless, and BMW have been able to show that they've got the package that Razgatlioglu is able to get the most out of.